What the hell are you doing here?
You think I'd let you do this on your own?
Oh boy, where do I start with this game? Just about all of the great parts of The Last of Us carried over into the sequel. The gameplay is roughly the same, with a scavenging system that really pushes you to explore buildings and be smart about which resources you're using. The stealth is still hit or miss. Sometimes I thought it was great, and other times enemies either instantly found me or walked into my companions who completely blew my cover. But the visuals and sounds are still just tremendous. The game is absolutely gorgeous, and the atmosphere, particularly around the infected, is just an absolutely terrifying experience. Everything in this game is great, except for the most important part. While The Last of Us didn't really need a sequel, there was certainly room for one. Joel's decision at the end of the first game was a massive choice that would inevitably have a significant impact on his relationship with Ellie. Joel and Ellie's relationship is what made The Last of Us such a stellar narrative, and instead of focusing on that, Naughty Dog inexplicably banged a U-turn and did something completely different that just didn't work for me. I understand what Naughty Dog was trying to do with this story, but they did it in a way that just didn't make any sense. Instead of telling us about the fallout from the first game and then transitioning into a revenge story, the game opens up with a highly controversial plot point, ultimately forces you to play as the game's antagonist, and attempts to retroactively fill us in on the details we should have had at the beginning of the game. The game is more about the aftermath of the fallout of Joel's decision rather than the other way around. It's almost like Naughty Dog saw Negan's introduction to The Walking Dead and decided they wanted to do that without actually understanding why it worked. Abby is an awful character. The first time we're introduced to her, she's immediately talking about how many people she's about to kill to get what she wants. Then she does something shitty, and the game ultimately forces you to play from her perspective for almost half the game. It's a shallow effort to force you to sympathize with a character, using some of the most transparent methods of doing so I've ever seen. Her section of the game completely drags because I wanted absolutely nothing to do with her. Rather than introducing us to a new character and putting us in a position to grapple with her situation later on, they throw this unlikable murderer in our face and then try to tell us later that she's actually not that bad. Even this game's treatment of Ellie is kinda shitty. For the first half of the game, I felt like the game really wanted me to hate Ellie. For whatever reason, the game tries very hard to make you feel guilty about what she's doing and desperately wants you to think bad of her. It's a very weird way to treat a character that so many people desperately loved following the first game. And by the end of the game, it sort of worked because Ellie is borderline unlikable by that point. I just don't get it. And look, there are parts where The Last of Us Part 2 hits on the points that the first game did so well. But those points are buried under so much shit that they served as reminders of what the game should have been, rather than something that actually made the game better. It's like Naughty Dog completely missed the entire point of their own game. This game's story could have worked, but it needed to be completely restructured and told in a different way. Instead, it just feels jammed down your throat. But the best thing that The Last of Us Part 2 does is its accessibility settings and difficulty sliders. Naughty Dog did an exceptional job making this game playable for everyone. There are all sorts of settings that allow for players with different impairments to play this game, and it should serve as a model for the industry moving forward. Gaming is something that everyone should be able to participate in, and developers should make it a point of emphasis to help players who have difficulties with things like hearing or sight to play their games. I'm definitely being really harsh in my reception of this game, but what made the first game one of my all-time favorites was the story. The Last of Us is a narrative experience that is great entirely because of the development of Joel and Ellie's relationship. If the game's story isn't about that, then there's really nothing there making it special, and I'm not that interested. The Last of Us Part 2 thinks it's special, and it's just not. The Last of Us Part 2 doesn't put nearly enough focus on the actual fallout of Joel's decision, and it made it one of my all-time most disappointing video game experiences.